Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese master of war, states, "He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks. He will win who, prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared." Has China just launched the final decisive battle in its war against America via Mexico? I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On. Well, a while back, and I clearly remember my incredulity when this government announced it was likely to miss its new hospital building targets for 2030. It astonished me because that at the time was over 6 years away. So our government cannot build hospitals in 6 years? I also remember the Chinese building a hospital in Wuhan province during the pandemic that was built in 10 days. Yeah, I kid you not. From a brownfield site to fully constructed, built, equipped, powered and staffed in literally 10 days. It makes no sense. And this wasn't a small hospital, it was bigger than the largest Tesco superstore in the whole of the UK today. What's this got to do with EVs, you may ask? Well, first, I'm coming across more and more chargers that are built and completed, just seemingly waiting for the electricity connection to the grid. This will be the subject of a separate video, looking into how this happens and who's actually holding up the switching on of these chargers that our government has paid someone else to install. But the emphasis of this video is to look at the speed of building the factories that make EV components and the EV factories that make our EVs. That has a definite comparison with Wuhan. Well, in 2017, Elon Musk offered a bet to an Australian billionaire that he could supply and install a 100 megawatt grid-connected battery storage system in Australia, halfway around the world, in less than 100 days, or he would install it free of charge. Now, just a message for all you Elon haters, forget for a moment it's him. Just look at the engineering aspect of this. 100 megawatt battery connected grid system in 100 days. And he did it with many days to spare. Well, here in the UK, I've visited charger installations that have been stood idle, waiting for power for over twice that length of time. This is a national scandal. We, the taxpaying population, pay companies for EV public chargers to be installed, yet our national grid cannot connect them. And yet, I am fully aware of the role of the DNO, but of course you may not know that the national grid is not owned by the government or the people of the UK, but by private entities, including BlackRock, Abu Dhabi, Merrill Lynch, Legal & General. And you probably don't know that National Grid in turn actually owns the DNOs that connect the power to the EV chargers. Or in many cases, DNOs are now directly owned by the National Grid and have merged. Oh, much more of this revelation in our follow-up video. Make sure you don't miss that one. It's an absolute blockbuster. Well, moving away from EV charging, way back in 2009, Elon Musk announced that he would be building a factory, a gigafactory in Shanghai, China. First of its kind, massive and all of that. And it's owned by Tesla, not the Chinese government or even a joint venture company, which every other Western company had to tolerate and still do to this day. I have no idea how he got away with that one. Well, more importantly, he predicted it would be up and running, actually turning out EVs within a year of starting. Well, in the UK, we can't even get planning permission in a year. Well, the planning was approved, work began in January of that year, the electrical installation was completed in 168 days, and production began in October, with the first Model 3 rolling out of the factory in December the same year. It now manufactures well over 500,000, probably closer to 1 million cars a year, as a simply staggering speed. But it's not uncommon in China. BYD built and started production of a new battery factory in just over a year. CATL have built and launched their sodium-ion battery plant, the first of its kind in the world. It was announced in 2021, but it's already turning out batteries by the end of 2023. In comparison, Toyota announced in 2021 a new internal combustion engine factory scheduled to begin production in 2025 in the USA. 4 years for doing something they're already doing. They also announced a new battery plant, also scheduled to turn out the first LFP batteries in 2025. Is it possible that the LFP battery will be obsolete by this time if CATL have hit mass production of sodium-ion batteries in 2023 or early 24? GM announced a massive $2 billion investment in a new ICE engine plant in Flint, Michigan, to begin production in 2026. In a similar vein, Ford announces new battery factory in 2021, scheduled to start production 2026, but that's already been put on hold or released. I can't keep up with it. Plus, Ford and GM have openly reverted to ICE for their profits, the hybrids, while waiting for the EV market to pick up. Well, despite the media headlines, EV sales are still growing all around the world, even in China, despite a plethora of smaller startup companies going bust. They were always going to go bust. They had a massive investment into EVs and everything to do with EVs. They were not all going to survive, just like elsewhere they don't survive. But the outlook for 2024 is really bright for EVs. But China is rapidly building an excess of EV capacity. They're now building more EVs than the local demand. So they're looking to expand outwards. BYD recently announced this to build a factory in Indonesia. January 2024 was the announcement. No planning or anything pre-approved, but it predicts it will be turning out EVs and batteries before 2026. They've also announced joint ventures in Hungary and Brazil. Well, the first impact on the West is likely to be BYD opening a factory in Hungary. No set dates, no definite commitment, but it's likely to happen, and the impact will be huge if it does. I believe it's actually possible that before Ursula von der Leyen, head of the European Commission, succeeds in passing a law that places tariffs on Chinese EVs to protect its own EV industries, BYD will happily be turning out EVs that not only attract no tariff but also get all the subsidies because they're being made in Europe. Meanwhile, BYD also announced joint venture in Brazil, and they're actively looking to build a new factory in Mexico. Just think, Joe Biden is fighting to impose tariffs on everything Chinese, while BYD will be manufacturing in Mexico, and their cars that they produce will get no tariffs and will qualify for all of the USA Inflation Reduction Act subsidies and tax breaks. Wow! Great Wall Motors are also on the move and recently opened R&D centres in USA, Germany and Austria. SAIC already has a factory here in the UK in Longbridge and another in India. But the biggest threat to the whole of the USA legacy motor industry is with BYD in Mexico. Well, it's not just because it will bypass tariffs and get subsidies and tax breaks, but mainly because of the speed at which they operate. While Ford, Stellantis and GM are investing heavily in ICE production and just dabbling again in EVs, BYD will go all in with super budget EVs in the market that Ford, GM and Stellantis have already given up on. The budget sub $30,000 family car. When Joe Biden announced the Inflation Reduction Act, it was meant to create jobs for Americans in America, but quickly hit a snag. Well, two in fact. First, Europe screamed that this was protectionism and threatened to slap sanctions on US products. Second, most USA legacy manufacturers had existing factories in Mexico. So the rules were quickly softened. The IRA would be available for the whole of North America, that includes Mexico and Canada, but also it includes any other country within its free trade area. And they would qualify, and that now includes countries like Korea, home of Hyundai and Kia, and many South American countries. And this is all vital because cars manufactured within these areas qualify for a subsidy or tax break of $7,500 for most cars. So the theory was that the good guys got the subsidies and the bad guys, China, dipped out totally. But you see, China's not sitting back quietly writing off a very large EV market. It will support BYD and any others in their ventures into Detroit territory. Well, America has a strange business relationship with Mexico. For many years there were huge tariffs and outright bans on exporting or importing goods to or from Mexico. But lately, as more and more American manufacturing is carried out there, mainly because of cheap labour rates, these have all been lifted. Ford, GM and Stellantis all have huge manufacturing facilities in Mexico with more planned. And they're drawn by the ultra-cheap labour and relatively lax pollution laws. But the problem is America cannot dictate to Mexico which other companies can set up business there. China is heading there big time and really fast. Mexican governments love it as it brings in money from jobs and, dare I say it, and probably a few more dollars in bribes. But once they begin manufacturing there, all their products will have totally free access into the States, and all their products made there will qualify for the IRA. So the final decisive battle in the silent war between China and the USA might just be gearing up for real action. Well, picture the scene. You see, Ford, GM and Stellantis have all had their fingers badly burned with their first venture into the world of EVs. Many people say that EVs are in terminal decline. No, that's nowhere near the truth. The best-selling car in the world today is an American-made and designed Tesla Model Y. That's an EV. And it's not even a cheap EV. What actually happened was that the legacy auto didn't want to compromise their ICE business with EVs, so they just threw together substandard EVs, and they were effectively just ICE cars with the ICE bit removed. They had batteries added, electric motors added, but they were twice the price, and they relied totally on their customers remaining completely loyal to the brand. Now, the early adopters did buy them in quite sensible numbers, but they found out very quickly, first, they were substandard. There were much better EVs on the market, far cheaper. And second, they found they couldn't be charged anywhere reliably and quickly because the EV charger network was almost non-existent, and what was there was already falling apart. So people just stopped buying them, and they bought better EVs away from legacy altogether. And legacy has now just finally realised that they're not even selling their traditional ICE cars anymore, because in many countries around a quarter of their customers were now buying EVs, just not from legacy. And even in America it's gone over 10% now, and that's a huge drop in the market. No company with any product can see a drop of 10% in their customer base and still prosper the same as before. Double whammy. Now, it's going to take legacy a good 5 years to bring about a total reset, catch up to date, design purpose-built EVs, and get the latest batteries and software and technology all fully functional. Only then will they be able to mass produce good, high quality, high tech, competitive cars at competitive prices. But even that is at risk because so many of the top echelon of legacy management just don't want EVs at all at any price at any time. They love what they've been doing in the past and want to stick with it. So legacy auto is effectively out of the picture until towards the end of the decade. Meanwhile, if BYD sets up a factory in Mexico and applies the lessons it has learned and moves with the speed it knows it can do, it could easily have a factory up and running by the end of this year or early 2025. And here would be the first major knockout blow to legacy auto. BYD will not follow Ford, GM and Stellantis in making hugely expensive, top-of-the-range, high-spec models to get the highest profit margins. BYD and any others will aim directly at the wide open market for EVs in the sub $30,000 bracket, with models like the Atto, the Dolphin and the Seal, and they've just announced 7 new models, all in that sort of bracket, at the Shanghai Auto Show. All of these, if made in Mexico, will get the $7,500 subsidy. But at the same time, they will launch an unchallenged onslaught into the sub $20,000 market with the likes of the Seagull. Those will be selling into a very large market with no competition. Even Tesla will not have any budget vehicles on the road until late 2025 with the Redwood $25,000 model. But they have no plans at all for anything sub $20,000 in the next few years because they can sell everything they can produce, the 3s, the Ys, the Cybertrucks and the Redwood when it's launched. They'll sell them all, everything they can produce. But then even the Redwood will take a year or so to ramp up to full production speed. So back to Sun Tzu in The Art of War, who said, "He will win who, prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. The Chinese are poised to take over the USA EV market and totally collapse the Detroit-led ICE market by the end of the decade, and the US government cannot stop it and may not even realise just how bad things are. They can't apply tariffs to Mexican-built BYD cars without applying them to their own Mexican-built Fords and GMs. And Ford and GM will always do what they always do. They'll go for profit above all else by making the more expensive models, the top of the range, which carry higher profit margins, while BYD will sweep the floor from under them by offering equally high quality and high-tech EVs, but at a much lower price. By the time Ford and GM get back into production, they will have well and truly missed the boat. And if the budget end of the market is EVs, then that will instantly affect the ICE market. If you can buy a brand new EV for way under $20,000 and a decent family-sized SUV EV for under $30,000, the market for used ICE cars will be massacred. The average price of a used car in the States is $27,000. And in the UK, by the way, that's £17,000. Not that much dissimilar. Well, what would you rather buy? A $27,000 petrol car with maybe 10, 20, 30,000 miles on the clock, needing regular servicing, expensive to run, or a brand new EV needing no servicing, fully guaranteed for at least 4 years, battery and motor for 8 years? To me, that's game, set and match. Now, we in the UK and Europe are not likely to be as badly affected. You see, we already have Chinese factories employing locals and making good cheap cars like the best-selling MG4 and the Lotus. And our auto industry is merely a fraction of what it once was. We will see far more Chinese EVs on the roads, and if the progress is like it was in the 70s and 80s with the Japanese, we will end up with more new Chinese factories employing more UK workers. That's a win-win for us. Now, please do not send me your angry, "Oh, you're just a lover of a brutal dictator" comment. Yeah, I have no love for China, but I do recognise what they're doing and what they could do in the future. See, you in this case, seem to forget that many people also hated the Japanese in the 60s and 70s when we started importing their cars. There were very fresh memories of the war atrocities in many minds. That actually took a long time to dissipate, but it did in time. The Chinese bring their own atrocities, but if the cars are rather good and they're already selling rather well, and they do seem to rather be intent on dominating the world. But America has one final EV hurdle which may prove unsurmountable in their battle. They have a presidential election in November. I don't do much in the way of politics, not directly anyhow, but if Joe Biden is all out on clean green energy and transport and the Inflation Reduction Act and everything else, the other candidate, Donald Trump, provided he's not in jail, or maybe even if he is, he's definitely not a fan of EVs, nor renewable energy, nor windmills as he calls them, but is all in on the fossil fuel industry, oil and coal in particular. And he seems to have a bit of a love affair with President Xi of China. Well, America with a different president would be a very different country than if Biden gets a second term. Either way, the EV industry in the USA is in for a very rocky ride, and I predict it will not really survive as we know it today. I've always said EVs and renewable energy present the world with a transformation that is hugely disruptive, to say the least. Well, thanks very much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please click the like button. And if you would, please subscribe. It makes such a difference to us as a new channel. If you click the bell icon, the notification, you'll be notified the next time we launch a video. And a massive, massive, massive thank you, last but not least, to our Patreon members. This side of the business is growing dramatically. We've had our most successful month ever, and thank you so much for your support for the channel. I'm Dave.